Of our hearing today is to examine the fiscal year 2025 budget of the Space Force. Mr. Hill, I understand that you are testifying on Space Force policy issues in lieu of Dr. Plum, who recently left us. I will want to know the actions that your office has taken to help lower the classification levels of space programs so that the warfighter can use them more effectively. Many of these programs are so highly classified that few, if any, can use them, prohibiting information sharing in a time of conflict. Mr. Covelli, you are responsible for the acquisition of space assets. In October of 2022, you issued a memo on space acquisition tenets that outlined such common sense objectives as don't launch satellites before the ground system to use the data is complete. Pretty good advice. Thank you. As well as efforts to hold the industry accountable for the systems that they build. I'd like to know if you believe that those tenets are having an impact, and that you hope that they would that you hope that they would back in October of 2022. General Gateland, this is year 4 of the Space Force as a separate Title X service. If you look at the wall, your flag is there along with the other service flags. Now that you're a Title X service, I hope that you can share with us how you are training to defend our assets in space, as well as to help the warfighter on the ground achieve their objectives if called upon. For fiscal year 2025, the Space Force is requesting $29.4 billion, which is a $600 million decrease from the fiscal year 2024 request of $30 billion. General Gateland, it will be important to explain to the committee in open session how this essentially flat budget, actually declining budget, is impacting your ability to train and equip our Guardians to support the combatant commands. Again, I want to thank our witnesses for joining us, and after our short opening statements, we will have rounds of 5-minute questions of our witnesses. Senator Fisher.
Thank you, Senator King. Mr. Hill. Are you correcting us?
Yes, he was correcting my pronunciation. Gutlein. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Senator.
I'm sure I'm not the first person to ever mispronounce your name.
No, sir. I've grown up with that name and I've heard it every which way.
Thank you, sir.
Secretary Covelli, Mr. Hill, General Gutlein, thank you for being here today and for sharing your perspectives with this subcommittee, and thank each of you for your service. As this subcommittee knows, our capabilities in space provide our forces with unparalleled communications, targeting, and intelligence. Every other service relies on Space Force capabilities to close the kill chain. Our adversaries know this, and space is no longer a safe haven. It hasn't been for years, and it's taken the department far too long to openly acknowledge this. The fact is, we need to be investing more in both offensive and defensive space systems to counter our adversaries and safeguard our assets on orbit. And we need a space acquisition system that can do so effectively and quickly. I look forward to hearing about progress being made in space acquisition and what more can be done. However, we cannot maintain space dominance unless we provide the Space Force with the resources needed to do so. I was disappointed by the President's budget request, but I hope to work with my colleagues on this subcommittee and on the Appropriations Committee to provide funding for additional space systems, including one on General Whiting's unfunded priority list. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hill, are you leading off?
Thank you, Chairman King and Ranking Member Fisher, and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for inviting us to testify on the Department's fiscal year 2025 space budget. We are clearly in a time of rapid change in the space strategic environment, one which does not favor the slow or those resistant to change. China and Russia are rapidly fielding space and counterspace capabilities to hold the joint force at risk and to deny us the space-based services on which we rely. The scale and scope of the threats in space present significant risks to the American people, to our national interests, to allies and partners. To meet these challenges, And working within the constraints of the Fiscal Responsibility Act, the President's fiscal year 2025 budget requests $33.7 billion for space. Some of the critical investments include $2.4 billion for national security space launch, $1.5 billion for more resilient positioning, navigation, and timing, $4.2 billion for more resilient and protected satellite communications and the Space Development Agency's proliferated low Earth orbit transport layer, $4.7 billion to develop new missile warning and missile tracking architectures, and $12.3 billion for a range of capabilities to increase the resiliency of our existing architectures and protect our interests in space during competition, crisis, and conflict. In addition to our space investments, the Department has made significant progress over the last 2 years on 4 key space strategy and policy priorities, which I have detailed at length in my written testimony. These are space control, space cooperation, space classification, and commercial space integration. In short, we have obtained presidential guidance to assure our space missions and to protect and defend the joint force from space-enabled attacks. We have significantly expanded our space cooperation with allies and partners, charting a path towards true combined operations in space that will strengthen our collective deterrence and defense. And we have overhauled the Department's space classification policy to remove unnecessary barriers to information flow throughout the joint force and with our partners and with industry. And we have released the first ever Department of Defense commercial space integration strategy to harness the commercial sector's incredible innovation and to enhance our capability, capacity, resilience, and mission assurance. Going forward, the Department will continue to press on all 4 of these lines of effort. I believe the progress we have already made together will pay dividends for years to come. In closing, thank you again to the committee for its partnership and for its tireless dedication to the Department and our service members. I look forward to answering your questions.
Mr. Covelli, Secretary Covelli.
Chairman King, Ranking Member Fisher, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for inviting me to testify before you today. With the growing threats in space, we must continue to transform our space architecture to be more proliferated and more resilient so that it can always be counted on during times of peace, crisis, or conflict. As the Service Acquisition Executive for Space, I am focused on 2 things: driving speed in our acquisitions and delivering programs on cost and schedule. I'd like to highlight some of the progress we've made since I testified before this committee last year. Since the spring of 2023, the Space Development Agency has delivered 27 satellites to orbit, nearly all of them in around 3 years from contract award. This includes 8 new missile warning, missile tracking satellites and 19 data transport satellites. With these systems, we've been able to demonstrate the first ever Link 16 network connection from space, a capability that will allow warfighters to send beyond line-of-sight messages. The Space Rapid Capabilities Office completed and is in the process of fielding the first 11 of 24 low-cost transportable terrestrial satellite communications jammers. These jammers went from contract award to fielding in about 18 months. Additionally, last June, Space RCO completed an on-orbit testing of its enhanced threat awareness payloads and delivering those payloads to the Space Force programs to use. Meanwhile, the Space Systems Command continues to make outstanding progress towards modernizing both our missile warning and military satellite communications architectures to be more resilient. Space Systems Command launched the first weather system follow-on microwave satellite last month to support the pivot to a more resilient, disaggregated hybrid weather architecture to meet warfighter requirements. Last September, Space Systems Command's tactically responsive space mission known as Victus Nox demonstrated the ability to go from factory floor to on-orbit operations in less than 5 days. And since April of 2023, there have been 7 national security space launches that deliver critical warfighting capabilities to orbit. SSC is also adding resilience through allied partnerships. For example, they delivered 2 enhanced polar system payloads, which will be hosted on Space Norway satellites that will be dual launched this July, providing protected satellite communications in the Arctic region. Space Systems Command even broke ground this summer in Australia, or last summer, on the Deep Space Advanced Radar Capability Site 1, and will award a design contract for Site 2 this summer with the United Kingdom. This partnership with Australia and the UK is critical to our space domain awareness mission. We're also continuing to take advantage of strong space industrial base, including awarding contracts to many non-traditional space companies and implementing our recently published commercial space strategy. Simultaneously, we are aggressively tackling challenging programs to get them over the finish line. We are focused on delivering the GPS Next Gen Operational Control segment, also known as OCX, and making significant progress towards getting the system ready to transition to operations in 2025. Another one of our challenging programs, Atlas, has made significant progress. The program is on schedule to incrementally deliver space domain awareness command and control capabilities next year to enable, finally, the decommissioning of the legacy SPADOX system. We've also proven now that we can build small satellites quickly. However, as we begin to deliver the next tranche of SDA satellites this fall, getting the military services to adopt and use these satellites will be a key success to our systems. Likewise, our ability to maintain assured access to space for our space capabilities remains paramount, and launch providers must be ready to scale to meet the increased demand. We are also working to move programs out of special access program stovepipes. Thanks to DoD Space Classification Policy Update this past December, this will improve our ability to integrate space to support other domains and enable better sharing with our allies. Overall, we are doing a lot by simultaneously transforming our space architecture to make it more resilient, and at the same time investing in those protect and defend missions that we need to do to guarantee the advantage we get from space and protect the joint forces. As we continue to drive speed into our acquisitions, our job and our top priority as acquisition professionals is centered around program execution. Simply defined, it means delivering programs on cost, on schedule, that work. We're taking a special interest in making sure that upfront, when we develop our action strategies and RFP documents or request for proposal documents, that they are realistic and executable, that we implement source selection strategies that leads us to awarding contracts with achievable cost and schedule baselines, and to a contractor with the right expertise, skills, and staff to do the job, and then once under contract, relentlessly managing the program baseline on a daily basis to ensure we deliver on cost and on schedule. Given the threats and increased capabilities of our competitors, it is critical that we deliver programs on cost and schedule, and this is a key focus area for me. Thank you to the subcommittee for all your support. I look forward to your questions.